Renewal by Trans Juniper. Chapter 1. Setting Off. Luna's hair was never tidy. It wasn't that she never brushed it. She did, every morning, as much as she possibly could. But she had a habit of playing with it when she was nervous, running her fingers through it, twisting it around her fingers, pulling it back from her head, or, when it was tied up, running her hands over her ponytail. And Luna was always nervous. Especially today. She'd barely let go of her hair since waking up, and no amount of hairbrushing was going to do away with the consequences of anxiety. "You'll be okay," Yang assured her, trying her best to smooth out her daughter's hair. Every time she got a few strands back into place, a few more would pop up, as if they had a mind of their own. "You won't be as far away from us as you think. And you can call any time," Blake added gently. Luna had a feeling that if she followed that advice, her parents' scroll would never see a moment's rest. Luna tried not to shake, unable to push down her anxiety. The rest of her extended family had all stopped by the Xiaolong household earlier that morning to see her off, but she was grateful that it was just her parents and sister now. She didn't think she'd be able to handle waiting here for the airship if she'd been surrounded by so many others. She adored her family with every part of her being, but being around so many people at once, even people she knew and loved, was often too much to handle. That was a big part of what worried Luna about attending Beacon. Far more people in general, but also far more strangers. Strangers that she'd have to talk to, interact with, maybe even fight. She wasn't ready for it. "I know," she sighed, trying to push away the thought of social interaction. She could worry about that when she got there. "I'm going to do my best, I promise. I won't let you down." "Hey." Blake sat down on the nearby bench and tapped it, gesturing for Luna to sit beside her. With another sigh, Luna slumped down onto the cold metal surface. She wasn't sure what motherly advice she was about to get, but Blake was very rarely unhelpful. "There's nothing you could ever do to let us down," Blake told her insistently, her voice firm but gentle. "We don't care whether or not you beat any records or get good grades or win every sparring match. What matters to us is that you're happy and that you feel safe. Don't forget that." Luna smiled, slightly comforted. She would miss her mother's gentle assurance, but it was good to know that they weren't putting any pressure on her. Not that she didn't feel the pressure anyway. Feeling safe, though? She wasn't sure that she'd felt completely safe in years. Whether something was actually wrong or not. It was like there was a king taijutsu in the pit of her stomach, and every time she started to relax it would wiggle a bit, just to remind her that it was there and could strike at any moment. "Blake's right," Yang added. "And remember that you won't be alone there. You'll have Cobalt, remember? And I'm sure Coco and Jean will be happy to look out for you when they can." Coco Adele and Jean Arc were teachers at Beacon Academy and close friends with Luna's parents. Jean, in particular, was especially close with Yang and Blake, but that closeness was the case for all of Team Ruby and Junior. These things tended to be the case when you saved the world together and became legendary heroes in the eyes of the world. Luna couldn't imagine a time where any of the 7 adults had ever not known each other. You could pick one of them, and the others knew everything there was to know about them. Luna longed for a friend group that close. If only she had the courage to talk to anyone that wasn't her best friend. "Oh, say hi to Jean for me," Blaze piped up, her cat ears twitching. She'd been unusually quiet since arriving at the stop. Luna had a feeling her sister was going to miss her more than she was letting on. "You just saw him the other day," Luna pointed out. Blaze frowned. "I know, but he's been so busy." Luna huffed gently. "I'll be sure to let him know you miss him." A gradually loudening whirring noise caught her attention, and she looked up to see the Beacon airship transport descending. It briefly blocked out the sun, casting a shadow that was very accurate to how she felt right now. Her heart lurched. "Looks like it's time to go." There was a touch of sadness in Yang's voice, and Luna was seriously tempted to change her mind about attending the academy right then and there. But the airship landed, and she knew it was too late to back out now. Besides, she knew how thoroughly embarrassing it would be if she turned a tail and ran home in front of an airship full of people. She could see the headline now. Daughter of the legendary Blake and Yang Xiaolong, too cowardly to attend Beacon Academy like her parents before her. Shameful. As the airship door opened and a couple of other students from Patch boarded, the familiar face of Cobalt Scarlatina appeared in the doorway and waved over to the family. Luna took one step in the ship's direction before instantly whirling around and wrapping her mother's in a tight hug, tears forming in her eyes. She wasn't ready for this. "I'm gonna miss you guys so much," she sniffed. "We'll miss you too, little bee," Blake replied warmly. Luna felt like a child again, wrapped in the comforting embrace of her mother's after some terrible nightmare or a loud noise, or whatever other thing had scared her that day. Blaze joined in on their hug. "I'll be there with you before you know it," she asserted. "You know, in 2 years." Luna finally pulled back and wiped her face with her sleeve. How long would it be before she could hug them again? "Go learn how to beat things up," Yang urged her warmly. "We'll cheer you on from home." Luna managed a shaky nod. "I'll call tonight," she promised. It would honestly be a struggle not to call them beforehand. Her suitcase tight in her hand, she forced herself to turn and head towards the airship. Her legs were starting to feel shaky, and it was all she could do not to stumble. In her mind, a part of her screamed, "You're making a mistake. Go home with your family. Go home where it's safe." "Goodbye, have fun," Blake called after her. "Don't burn anything down," Yang added. Cobalt greeted her with a hug as she boarded. He seemed as calm and collected as ever. His rabbit ears flopped over slightly. As Luna's best, and only, friend, his presence, at least, was comforting. If she focused on him, she could try to pretend that nobody else was there. Even just from hugging him, her heartbeat slowed, just a tiny bit. "You nervous?" Cobalt asked, a twinkle in his eyes. It was sweet of him to pretend that he didn't know that she absolutely was. Luna stared out the window at her family as the airship door closed again. "Of course I am." She reached out with her semblance for Cobalt's emotions. He was a lot more excited than he was letting on, but not nearly as anxious as she was. Good for him. He gave her a friendly nudge as the airship lifted off again. "Ah, come on, we'll be fine. You've got your best buddy with you." Luna couldn't help but grin. "Yeah, okay. Just don't go abandoning me, will you?" "Even if I end up on a separate team," Cobalt promised. "I've got your back." Luna heaved a relieved sigh and leaned back against the wall. "Good. Please let him be my partner," she begged the gods inwardly. Not that they'd ever been much help in the past. She didn't know what she'd do without Cobalt by her side. He'd been her only friend at Signal, the only person happy to go along with anything, even if it just meant sitting quietly in a library without exchanging a word. If he didn't end up her partner, or at least on the same team as her, she didn't know what she'd do. "Hey, think of it this way," Cobalt pointed out. "This time tomorrow will be official huntsman in training, and it'll only be a matter of time before we're out there helping people and beating Grim into smoke." He punched the air lightly. "Maybe even catching criminals, or getting cats out of trees." Luna smiled. That, at least, she was looking forward to. Not getting cats out of trees specifically, but actually getting out there. Letting herself loose, getting caught up in the battle and not having to worry about other people. She was good at fighting. She was at least confident in that much. With luck on her side, she'd make it through the year. One thing was for sure. Fighting monsters was a lot harder than fighting her own worries. Lily wasn't nervous. Not scared or worried or anxious or any other synonym. But she still wasn't looking forward to the journey she was about to embark on. Not in the slightest. She would rather walk through the vacuum desert with half a bottle of sandy water than be walking down this street. And yet, here she was, on her way to Beacon Academy, dragging her suitcase behind her with her hood over her head in an attempt to stay unnoticed. Her conversation with her mother from that morning was still fresh in her mind. "You don't have to do this," Emerald had told her, "not if it's not what you want." "I do have to," Lily had insisted. "Whether or not I want to doesn't matter. People are never going to stop treating us like criminals if I don't." The dirty looks, the sneers, the general nasty attitude from society. It would all end if she could do good as a huntress and prove that she and her mother were good people, worthy of respect. If she could make her mother believe that she herself was worthy of respect. Emerald had looked tired, that same old look of endless guilt spreading across her face. "You're not responsible for what I've done. I should be the one making things better." "But you won't," Lily had wanted to reply, though she'd held herself back. Her mother had spent years beating herself up over past mistakes, but her pride still got in the way of asking anyone for help. Certainly not anyone from Teams Ruby or Junior, considering all they'd already done for her. Personally, Lily thought they hadn't done enough. So what if Emerald hadn't sought them out after they'd helped her avoid jail time? They should have known that she'd still need help, especially after Lily had been born. But no, nothing. Not so much as a scroll call. No popping in to check if maybe their former enemy suddenly had a newborn daughter that she could really use some help looking after. Given that single mothers who used to work for Remnant's greatest enemy were not on the Vale government's favorite people list. Instead, Lily had continued to insist that this was something she needed to do. Becoming a huntress, clearing the family name. She was going to fix everything. Emerald hadn't fought her on it. She'd pulled her daughter into a tight hug, telling her how proud of her she was and that she was welcome to come home any time. And as much as Lily appreciated it, she wasn't going to let herself cave. Of course she would have liked to stay with her mother. Of course she would have liked to accept the little comfort and security she got, instead of throwing herself into an academy filled with people who were sure to hate them both. But this was not a matter of choice. She could see Beacon clearly now, a vast and tall building of impressive structure. Tall towers pierced the sky, fresh grass grew over the courtyard, and hundreds of students were gathering for the first day of the year. It was hard to imagine that, just a couple of decades ago, it had been broken down into ruins, crawling with Grimm and the aftermath of a horrific battle. Lily tried not to think of the role her mother had played in said battle. It was never her fault, she insisted fiercely to herself. Emerald had never been willing to talk about Cinder much, but Lily knew enough to know that the older woman had been a master of manipulation, with an iron grip on her mother that hadn't broken until Emerald had seen for herself that Cinder had never cared for her. Lily's grip on her suitcase tightened just thinking about it, stormy thoughts gathering in her mind. She almost wished Cinder hadn't been killed in the final battle, so that she could do it herself. Had it not been for her, everything might have turned out okay. They might have had a nice house, maybe even a complete family. Maybe Lily would have even gained a few friends by now. But the past was the past. It couldn't be changed. She wasn't here to make friends, and nobody wanted to be friends with her anyway. She'd learned that the hard way, a long time ago. The future, though, that she could control. She couldn't change the past, but she could change people's minds. If she could just prove herself to be as capable and heroic as any other competent huntsman. She kept the thought in mind as she approached the academy gates and paused to take the vastness of the school grounds in. Countless people flocked around as airships full of new students landed. It was loud, busy, annoying. But this was where Lily was going to set things right. This was where she was going to make people realize what kind of people she and her mother truly were.